بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Today we're looking at the chapter in relation to patience about Allah's pre-adornments is part of faith or iman. We're looking at the chapter in relation to patience, sabr, ala aqdarillah, in relation to the pre-decree or the pre-adornments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's from iman. So here this chapter is important because we know sabr, patience, is such a great virtue in Islam and highly rewarded, highly referenced and encouraged in the Sharia. So Shaykh al-Uthaymeen, he begins by saying a sabr, patience, linguistically or lexically, according to the language of Arabs, it means to hold back yourself or something. Habs al-nafs. Such as someone so was killed sabran, means he was held back while in a state of captivity. So linguistically, sabr means habs al-nafs, holding the soul back or the self back from something. This is what sabr is, linguistically. But technically, it is to hold back the soul upon some things and away from certain other things. So it's to hold back the self. Again, habs al-nafs, you're holding back yourself, your soul, in relation to doing certain things and away from certain other things. So you're holding this soul back to continue upon certain good things. I'm going to give this some of the patience in relation to obedience of Allah. And other types is in relation to the things that Allah has prohibited, the ma'asi, that which is ma'asiyah, that which is disobedience. So he says then that sabr has three divisions, three categories. The scholars generally mention this. Sabr has thalatha aqsam, three categories. Number one, sabr, patience from the disobedience. Shaykh Muhammad begins the other way, but we'll just begin like this. Patience from the disobedience. Amma naha Allah. Sabr, patience from that which Allah has prohibited. The second one, patience ala ta'atillah. Patience upon the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, upon that which is legislated. We're going to come to the proofs for all of these. And the last one, which this whole chapter is about, sabr ala aqdarillah. Patience upon the pre-adornments, the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in relation to patience, in relation to the disobedience of Allah, means being patient, holding yourself back, restraining yourself from sin. The Shaykh mentions the example of the wife of Aziz, when she seduced Yusuf alayhi salam. She had power, she had might. He was patient. Allah says, قال ربي, He says, قال ربي السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه. Oh my Lord, prison is more beloved to me than that which they are calling me towards. وإلا تصرف عني كيدهن أصب إليهن وأكن من الجاهلين. And until or unless you turn me or you turn away their plot from me, I will feel inclined towards them and be from one of those who are ignorant. So here, Yusuf alayhi salam is patience from this ma'asiyah. Allah says, فَاصْبِرْ لِحُكْمِ رَبِّكَ. And we're going to get to that next one. So to here, disobedience, he's patient, holding himself back. Patience from that which Allah has prohibited. Intoxicants, zina, stealing, any haram. Be patient not to do it. As for proof for patience upon the ta'ah, the obedience of Allah, Allah says, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. Order your kin, or your children, or your family, because it includes everybody, to pray and be patient upon it. Allah says, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ تَنزِيلًا فَاصْبِرْ لِحُكْمِ رَبِّكَ وَلَا تُطِعْ مِنْهُمْ آثِمًا أَوْ كَفُورًا. Verily we have sent down to you the Qur'an in stages. Therefore be patient, Muhammad, upon the commandment of Allah, and do not obey the one who is آثِمًا أَوْ كَفُورًا, sinful or disbelieving. Allah says, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُم بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Be patient. Keep yourself, O Muhammad, patiently with those who called on their Lord, glorifying Him, remembering Him, morning and afternoon, seeking His face alone. So being patient again with them. Allah talks about also in Surah Al-Maryam about the different categories of التوحيد. Allah is the Rabb of the samawat وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا فَاعْبُدُهُ وَاصْطَبِرْ لِعِبَادَتِهِ. Worship and be patient upon His worship. هَتَعْلَمَ لَهُ سَمِيًّا. Do you know anyone who has or who is similar to Him? So sabr ala ta'atillah. It's something important. It's not easy. وَاصْبِرْ وَمَا صَبْرُكَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. So when by Allah's permission, someone can continue to pray. وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. So even salah, we take it for granted. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one aiding us to be praying it every day, 5 times a day, for the rest of our life. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ability aiding us and His tawfiq. Otherwise, by ourselves, we cannot do it. We can have intention, but we may not have the ability. Allah gives us all of this. So sabr and these ibadat, and we have to remind ourselves, this is important. Sabr and ibadah is very important. And Shaykh is going to categorize which one is better than which. And our chapter today is sabr ala aqdarillah. So the sabr, one patience in relation to the things that come to your way, your calamities, misfortunes. So Allah here, He tells us, وَاصْبِرْ لِحُكْمِ رَبِّكَ. Be patient in relation to the ruling of your Lord. فَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ أُولُو الْعَزْمِ. Be patient, O Muhammad, like the patient of the rightly, or the prophets of strong resolve. مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. So Musa, Nuh, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These prophets, Allah says, the one before him, take example. وَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبْرَ الْعَزْمِ. So this is patient ala aqdarillah. What comes your way? Be fortune, sadness, poverty, hunger. And so Shaykh said, because this is endurance regarding the conveyance of the message and the afflictions of his people, such as he's saying to one of those who came to deliver a message from one of his daughters, when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of his daughters, her child was dying, is to tell her to exercise patience and hope for Allah's reward. Hadith Bukhari. To be patient. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told, when affliction comes our way, as-sabr 'inda sadmatul ula. Patience in the first striking of the calamity. Patience in this first striking of the calamity. Otherwise, if somebody were to just be patient to the passing of time, then that is easy. You can't change something that happened. Allah decreed it to happen. You'll be patient by force. Because it's just passing of time, what can I do? So the real patience, when it comes to you the news, you failed the course, you didn't get the job, so-and-so passed away, such and such sickness you have. Sabr and sadmatul ula. First, you hold yourself back immediately. When it comes to the patience, of course, the Shaykh is going to categorize then the categories. But these three, the ulama have mentioned qadiman, before. So this was mentioned by Ibn Qayyim in Madarij al-Salikin, this categorization of these three. For example, he mentions this from Imam al-Harawi before him. So in this volume 2, page 156, in Madarij al-Salikin, Ibn Qayyim, he mentions this. And after him, Hafid ibn Rajab, rahimahullah, in Jami' Ulum al-Hikam, the Sharh of Arba'in Nawiyya, page 649. So the ulama before, they mentioned these categories. In relation to patience, then no doubt it has much virtue. And this is why this chapter is important. Patience has a virtue. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam described patience. He said, "As-sabru diya." Patience is like a radiant light. Another hadith he said, وَمَنْ يَتَصَبَّرْ يُصَبِّرْهُ اللَّهُ. Whoever tries to be patient, Allah will make him patient. وَمَا أُعْطِيَ أَحَدٌ. He said, no one was given عَطَاءً خَيْرًا وَأَوْسَعَ مِنَ الصَّبْرِ. Nobody was given a gift that is better and more spacious than patience. So whoever tries to be patient, Allah will make them patient. وَمَا أُعْطِيَ أَحَدٌ عَطَاءً خَيْرًا وَأَوْسَعَ. No one has been given any gift. It's the bounty of Allah that is more spacious and better than patience. And even the Sahaba, they knew how important patience was in their life. There's a narration authentic from Umar. He said, مَا وَجَدْنَا خَيْرٍ. We didn't find any good or something as good. In relation to Aishina, regarding our lives, بِمِثْلِ sabr, like sabr. Means patience is such a great bounty in life. Both ways. So when something good happens, to be good upon khair, this is requires patience. The calamity is patience. He said we didn't find something that was so good regarding our livelihood like the example of patience. And this Bukhari brings his mu'allaq and Shaykh Hizam says sahih. The narration is actually authentic from Umar. So patience is great virtue. So here the Shaykh is talking about this category, the last one, which is patience upon the pre-adornments of Allah. So Shaykh then, when Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen, when discussing this, he then tries to categorize which patience is better than which. So he says, therefore patience of three kinds. The peak of its patience is upon obedience of Allah. Then the restraint from disobedience to Allah. Then patience upon Allah's pre-adornments. So if we look at patience, the best of it and the highest of it is in relation to patience upon obedience of Allah. Why? Because it's in relation to Allah. This is hasanat involved. This is the doing, fulfilling the commandments of Allah. This is the best form of patience. Otherwise, the Shaykh said, if you were to just look at the difficulty, then it's more difficult to be patient from disobedience than it is from obedience. He gives the example of a woman, beautiful woman trying to seduce you. The difficulty that has on a believer is more than maybe him praying many rak'at. It's easy for him maybe to pray so many rak'at, like he says 100 of rak'at. It's easier for him than the fitna of perhaps a beautiful woman. It's so hard to remove yourself from that. This is something that, in terms of difficulty, because we know Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what did he say? ما تركت بعد فتنة أضر على الرجال من النساء. I didn't leave behind a fitna more harmful, more difficult for men than the women. So in terms of difficulty, then being patient from disobedience is more difficult, and we find that because the soul and the people around us incurring the shahawat. And تميل ميلا عظيما. They want us to incline to them great inclination. Shaitan wants us to fall into dhunub ma'asi. So it's hard to hold yourself. And in this environment we're here now, we don't have to clarify more. We know. But in terms of what is better, then of course patience regarding obedience of Allah, because this is in relation to Allah, and Allah always comes first. So this is the most important one. Is in that one, being patient with your salawat, being patient with dhikr, adhkar, being patient upon ibadah, and other things like this. Then the second one is patient away from haram. And I believe it has to be patient in both. Because we need to remember, everything we do in our life, we have to have patience. And the last one is this one that we're talking about here. And Ibn Abdul also kind of indicates this as well, rahimahullah, that patience in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and obedience from Allah, and disobedience, these two are more important than patience, or more greater than the patience from the pre-decree. Because the one that pre-decree afflicts you, you have to be patient. There is little someone can do, but it's also wajib to be patient. I'm going to get there. Then the Shaykh continues, and he begins with the ahadith and ayat the Shaykh Islam quotes. Before we get there, he says, Ibn Qayyim says in Nunniyah, that is why we show pleasure with the decree, but disparage the decreed matter when that is a disobedient act. Shaykh's now going to touch upon something important. He says that the preordained affair may even be acts of obedience or sin, and it may be among Allah's exclusive actions. The acts of obedience must be accepted, but it is not allowed to be pleased with the sins for its being from the pre-decreed matter. So Shaykh now he makes a difference between al-qadr wal-maqdur. Farq bayn al-qadr wal-maqdur. So what he's saying here is that when Allah decrees something, sometimes Allah decrees something in relation to our lives that it could be good, it could be bad, in relation to us. But in Allah, everything is khayr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He decrees and He does whatever He wills. Everything Allah does is khayr. But in relation to us, it may be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed something. For example, someone committed disobedience. And this disobedience, right, we as believers, Muslims, we cannot be pleased with the person who's doing the disobedience, or the actual act of disobedience. But what we should be pleased with is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed it. So He makes a very subtle difference here between the two. And how the ulama understand it is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees something, He decrees it for hikmah, with hikmah and ilm. So for example, someone fell into disobedience. This is from the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَانَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قَدْرًا مَقْدُورًا. And the affair of Allah is something pre-decreed and ordained. No one can say it's not from Allah. That's important. Everything that happens in the heavens and earth is from the qadr of Allah. Kawniyan, if one uses the universal qadr, it has, Allah decreed it. But when it comes to this time when someone, for example, commits this sin, Shaykh Ibn Qayyim says, but we are pleased with the decree. But when it comes to the actual maqdur, the maf'ud that happened, the action that actually occurred, the person did, we're not happy with that particular action. Because the ma'siyah. So we can't say, well, Allah decreed it, so it's okay. The action He did, His decree of Allah is good. No, from the angle of decree, we have to be pleased with Allah's decree. Because Allah decreed it by wisdom, from wisdom and knowledge. But in terms of the one who did it, the action itself, we're not pleased with that. And that's why we make tawbah and we seek forgiveness. So it's a nice separation between al-qadr, the decreed matter, al-maqdur, that which is being decreed, and the muqaddar, right? The muqaddir, which is Allah Himself. So we need to pay attention to that. This is what the Qawl Al-Sahih Ibn Qayyim he mentions, and Shaykh Sam Taymiyyah also mentions as well. If you go to his Qasida Ta'iyya, he talks about this. So what is important for us is that when we talk about qadar, everything else decrees is khair in it. Right? But in relation to Allah, everything else is khair. But in terms of us, when someone does disobedience, we cannot use this excuse, oh, it's qadar Allah. And we already covered that before in some lessons. When it comes to the qadar Allah, can we use it as an excuse for disobedience? Abadan. We only use qadar as an excuse for the masa'ib, the calamities. So if you got into a car crash, qadar Allah. Qadar Allah ma shafa'a. What can I do? Allah decreed it for some bit of wisdom. Make my sins were too much, to expiate me, my dhunub, like this. But if someone goes and drinks khamr, mathalan, he can't say qadar Allah. Allah decreed it. Yes, from the qadar Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was a sin. So what do you have to be? Displeased with it. And you make tawbah ila Allah. So this is a benefit he mentioned, the difference between the preordained and the preordained matter. Farq bayn al-qadar wal-maqdur. And he does this to make it clear that somebody should be careful when he says that we believe in the qadar, we affirm it. Yes, we do, we believe in it, we're pleased with it, but when it comes to the actual occurrence, we have to remember, is it sin or not? A side benefit, Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen himself, in one of his fatwa, he differentiates between qadar and qada. Someone may ask, what's the farq between qadar and qada? Some of the scholars say there's no difference. Qadar and qada are interchangeable. But what's more correct, Shaykh said, that qadar and qada have differences. So he says, Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen, if Allah decrees something specific to occur at a specific time, so this decree is coming azali, in eternal time, means before it occurs, that's what's called qadar. The decree of something before its occurrence, this is called qadar. Decree of something before its occurrence, this is what we refer to as qadar. But when it comes to qada, he says, if the time for that action comes, that someone then falls into it, or the action occurs, this is called qada. So this is then the qada. And then he mentions some examples in the Quran like this. But he mentions in the summary that if someone were to look at these two, qadar and qada, sometimes they can carry the same meaning, but other times they differ in this meaning. So if something was decreed before it occurs, when it was decreed before it occurs, that's qadar. But while it happens, that's qada. That's what he said. This is the qada. So for example, Allah decreed for someone to fall into sin. And this is decreed before, for his creation, for his existence, for example. Then, when the time comes the person sinned, then that's called qada. And he mentioned a good principle like issue of Islam and Iman. If both the words come together in the same sentence, then what happens? They carry two different meanings. But if one is mentioned instead of the other, or vice versa, qadar is mentioned in qada, they carry the same meaning. They're both underneath it. Just like Islam and Iman. إذا اجتمعا افترقا وافترقا اجتمعا. If they come together in a sentence, qadar and qada, they carry two separate meanings. But if one is mentioned and not the other, then qadar and qada is included in one meaning. So this is in terms of the difference between the two. But of course, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's decreeing. So when it comes to sins, we should never try to make an excuse that Allah decreed it. We are always pleased with the decree of Allah, but when it occurs, we judge based on the action, if it's a sin or not a sin. If it's a sin, we're not pleased with it, and we make tawbah to Allah and return back to Allah. If it's a good deed, then we thank Allah for allowing us to do it. The first ayah Shaykh Hassan brings, Allah says, وَمَنْ يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهِ. Whoever believes in Allah, He guides his heart. Surah Taghabun. Al-Qama, rahimahullah, said, he is the man who is struck by an affliction and recognizes that it's from Allah, so he accepts it and submits to Him. So this, the first chapter for hadith ayah, is proving that somebody has to be patient with afflictions. Sabr ala aqdarillah. وَمَنْ يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, whoever believes in Allah, يَهْدِ قَلْبَهِ. Al-Qama is one of the big students of Ibn Mas'ud, one of his top students. There's two of them, Al-Qama and Al-Aswad. If you hear these names, they're kibar tabi'een. They're not the middle, they're the high ones, old. All the students of Ibn Mas'ud are his biggest students, Al-Qama and Al-Aswad. If you hear these names, these are big tabi'een. So he, rahimahullah, authentically says, and Shaykh Hizam says the narration is authentic, that he said, whoever believes in Allah, this ayah is referring to a man who's struck by an affliction, he recognizes this is from Allah, so what does he do? He accepts it and submits to Him. That's a proof that a Muslim, when affliction comes to them, what are they supposed to do? Yusallim, he submits, and he has rida, pleasure, he's pleased with it. He submits to Allah. فَيَرْضَى, you have to be pleased. This is the best thing to do, recommended thing to do. He afflicts you, submit to it, and then you are pleased with it. So this narration is authentic. Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen then mentions that he was one of the older followers of the companions. It means he's a senior tabi'i. And Al-Aqba's interpretation of the ayah is necessary because the implications of faith, because whoever believes in Allah recognizes that preadornments are from Allah, and so he will be pleased and submit. And since he knew that the affliction has come from Allah, then the heart feels tranquil and rest. This is one of the secrets of Qadr. Someone to look carefully in today's world. What is the consequence if you don't believe in Qadr? Your heart will never become tranquil. You never feel confident and safe. Everything that happens in the world, or if your actions or statements, you believe is your fault. You did it. You did something wrong. You did something right. And that's why Shaykh Muqbil in the beginning of Jami', the Kitab he wrote, called Jami', the compendium or the collection in relation to Al-Qadr, Jami' Sahih fi Qadr. He talks about in the beginning that how Qadr protects people from suicide, depression. Look, if you have this belief, whatever happens, you know it's from the Qadr of Allah, you always feel comfortable. If it's from my sin, let me tawbah to Allah. If Allah decreed khair for me, I thank Allah. If something I didn't do anything necessarily wrong, apparently, but Allah tested me, He wants to see if I'm sadiq or I'm a kadhib, I'm a trustworthy, truthful person in belief and faith, or I'm weak, I'm a liar, I'm not one who's strong in Islam. So you're always feeling confident, it's not my fault. Allah's testing me, I have to be patient. When someone doesn't believe in Qadr, his heart is never tranquil. Everything he blames himself and maybe even take his life. And that's why in many countries in the West, due to the lack of faith in Qadr and absence of faith altogether, they have this high suicide rates. So subhanAllah, this is a very important thing for a Muslim. Calms him and rests his mind. Then he continues, and before we move on, this is also a benefit that Iman is from, our actions are from Iman. Because Allah says, وَمَنْ يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, and Al-Qama explained the ayah to me, Amal. So Fath al-Bari, Shaykh Muhammad bin Hassan al-Shaykh, this is proof the actions from Iman. وَمَنْ يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ, whoever believes in Allah. What is he talking about here? Action. What's the action? You're having tasleem, you're having here submission to Allah and the pleasure for Allah. And we know from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we say that actions are from Iman. And this is one of the side benefits. More clear verses in the Quran too. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah will never make waste your Iman. In Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 143, that's talking about prayer. Allah called prayer Iman. So this is one benefit, if someone to see it. And other benefits we know, like the hadith Ibn Abbas of Wafd Abdul Qais, when they came to Rasulullah, he told them, تَدْرُونَ مَا الْإِيمان? Do you know what Iman is? They said, قال والله رسول أعلم. Then they said, شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله وإقام الصلاة, 5 pillars of Islam. So these are proofs to show a side benefit, which is that actions are from Iman. We know this, but here's a nice benefit. Because Allah says, وَمَنْ يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ. But then the tafsir of the ayah means action. So you see how clear cut this is in terms of a belief. Second hadith Shaykh Salam brings, hadith Muslim, Abu Hurairah reports, Allah Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, 2 matters with the people are acts of disbelief they commit: disparaging lineage and wailing over the dead. So here, he's talking about 2 major affairs, and they have to do with patience. Like the last one, wailing over the dead. Someone dies, you can't wail over them, you have to have patience. Ala aqdarillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests you. With what? With faqr, with poverty, with hunger, وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ أَمْوَالٍ, decrease in wealth, وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, death and fruits. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. So here's an example. So here we see 2 matters. Are acts of disbelief, this is what's important. Are these major or minor? Kufr is of 2 types, we know. And of course of other categories as well. Kufr akbar and kufr asghar. We have to know that. Sometimes ulama also say kufr al-amali and kufr i'tiqadi. Kufr of belief and kufr action. We need to know kufr is not of one type. So here, Rasulullah calls it action of kufr. And the 2 traits are acts of disbelief. And finding these 2 traits of disbelief does not imply that such a person is a disbeliever just because he has these 2. Ta'an fil ansab wal niyahatu al mayyit. Just because you have these 2 doesn't mean you're kafir. It's important. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, when it comes to the issue of takfir, we always understand kufr for what it is: major and minor. So major kufr is one that mukhrij min al-millah, expels you from the faith. Minor kufr is something that is a major sin. Everything the Sharia called kufr that doesn't take you out of the faith is called minor kufr. That's what it is. So here, if someone did disparage somebody's lineage and wail of the dead, they're not disbelievers. They have decreased their iman, they committed a major sin. This is the correct statement. Now, Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh says at an interesting point. except the statement of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, between a man and shirk and kufr is abandoning prayers. So these two are actions, kufr. These two hadith, two actions are called kufr, but they don't take you out of Islam. But the Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah said, except for another hadith, Abu Hurairah reports, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this hadith Jabir, between a man and kufr is the abandoning of prayer. Between man, بين الرجل والشرك والكفر ترك الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. This hadith. So in this hadith, just because this is called an action, disbelief, it's not like the other action. It's different levels. This one actually takes you out. Means if you don't pray all together, or you pray on and off, and we know there's a big difference of opinion there, but this is called kufr. That one is not like this one. So this is also how the ulama weigh. Some of them they say, well no, it's just like the rest of them. And some say, no, this is special. And what we need to benefit from this, when we look at this kind of hadith, we don't jump to the conclusion. We need to study them. We need to be careful. We don't say, something's kufr. You did it, brother. You're kafir. No, that's not how we do it. Very careful. We have to be careful with takfir. And this is a side benefit he mentions. How would it come we know this hadith of Jabir is not like the other two? This is where the question comes. He says, Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah said, because alif lam is used in this hadith. Alif lam, means mu'arraf. It's coming now as a definite. So he says that the meaning of kufr, every time the word kufr comes with alif lam, means it's in an indefinite form. Definite form. Then it means somebody is in indefinite form, which does not point it's definite form. Alif lam, definite form, it takes you out of Islam. And if you have kufr just by itself, nakira, then this one doesn't take you out of faith. This is something ulama mentioned. Ibn Taymiyyah mentions a principle. You find the word kufr with alif lam, then it means this is an action or an act of kufr out of Islam. But if you find kufr without alif lam, it just means it's a major sin. We're going to get there. But this principle is not correct, 100%. It's not itlaq. So some Ahl mentioned this, but if you look carefully at the nusus, it's not itlaq, ala itlaq. So some of them try to use this to say, okay, this one, no alif lam, this one says, الذي بين الرجل والشرك والكفر. Alif lam there. ترك الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. So there you go. This one's out of Islam. But some of the scholars, they mentioned it's not actually an absolute rule. And I'll give you an example. Shaykh Muhammad bin Salih quotes the hadith of Tha'ib ibn Qais and his wife. Hadith Bukhari. Tha'ib ibn Qais and his wife, she divorced him, al-khula'. And then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked her as to why. And she said, إني أكره الكفر في الإسلام. I dislike or dislike or I'm afraid of committing kufr in Islam. What does al-kufr here she means? Kufr al-ashira, not being grateful to her husband. That's what she intended. Then Rasul asked her why, and she explained. Then she returned back the mahar, and then the khula' was made. What's the proof here? إني أكره الكفر. But if you use the principle here, it means she's talking about major kufr now. So just because this rule, some ulama like Shaykh Islam mentioned, it doesn't mean it's a fixed rule. It gives you indication, but you still need to investigate. So that's why whenever you see the word kufr in a hadith or ayah, you check that understanding. Make sure before you jump in conclusion. The same way we know the Hadith Bukhari Muslim. Hadith Bukhari, when Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "Sibab Muslim fusuq wa qitaluhu kufr." Insulting a Muslim is wickedness, and fighting him is kufr. So if you had a fist fight with your brother now, what is going to happen? You can't say, brother, it's kufr. Kufr amal. Major sin. You're not supposed to fight the Muslims. This is why the fa'idah comes. Otherwise, it will make people make takfir left, right, and center. Everybody's fighting somebody. We see how many fights going on. This is not how Islam is. So we benefit from this also, that we pay attention to the levels. So it's a benefit in case you didn't know. Now you know how to measure. And then the Shaykh continues, but what's the benefit of this hadith? You need to have sabr ala aqdarillah. If someone dies, you can't wail. Wailing is haram. It means raising your voice when someone passes away. And saying words like, may I be destroyed, may I be, ruined, and stuff like this. So tongue and action. And the next hadith comes to prove that it can be both ways. It can be actions. You could be doing something with your, like ripping your shirt, or hitting yourself. Or another statement could be with your mouth. You could say, I'm destroyed, I'm ruined, I'm finished. And Shaykh then mentions that in reality, all calamities, when they come, you have four different things, four choices in relation to them. And four actions can occur when there is an active calamity. And this is actually what he's trying to summarize in this chapter. So number one, displeasure. The first thing that can happen when a calamity comes, you can have sukht. Sukht means you're displeased with it. It's the worst thing to do. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested you, you didn't do well in your school. There's 4 options you have then. Number 1 is sukht, to be displeased with the qadr of Allah, which is the worst, and not allowed in Islam. Because Allah decrees things bi'ilm al-hikmah. Allah ya'lam wa antum la ta'lamun. Asa an takrahu shay'an huwa khayrun lakum. You might dislike something that's good for you. Maybe it's good to you didn't do so well in this course. It's a benefit for you. You need to learn more. But so the first is sukht, it's the worst. It's adam. You have absence of sabr, and rida, and shukr. Everything's missing. You're not even, the basic is you have patience. You don't have that even. And the ulama take from this, also from all this, sabr is wajib. Whenever something happens, sabr is wajib. Sabr is wajib. You have to be patient. You're not allowed to have this one. So this is the worst. Shaykh said, the heart is being displeased with Allah and being annoyed by Allah's preordainment. And you can't be, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مِيَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ الْحَرْفِ. Some people, they worship Allah on the edge. Something good happens, everything is good. If something bad happens, they leave Islam. This is what will happen if you have sukht. You leave Islam. Or leave the ibadah altogether and say, look, I was doing good and this happened to me. I don't want Islam anymore. I don't want this. Na'udhu billah. And again, because of our ignorance, what do we know, right? We're human beings, we don't know much. So this is like the poet said, patience, like its name suggests, its taste is bitter, but its end is sweeter than honey. It's lines of poetry. Ibn Qayyim quotes in Dar al-Salikin as well. This is what's been said about sabr. Sabr is just like its ism, mithl ismu. It's bitter in its taste, but it's very sweet. So the worst of it is sukht. This is the lowest. Number 2 is that sabr may have patience. Number 2 is to have sabr. And sabr is wajib. You have to have patience. So calamity happens, okay, we didn't do well in the course, sabr. Fasbir sabran jamila. Have a beautiful patience. Allah testing me, I'll be patient. Hold back myself from complaining, lying about other people, making excuses. Fasbir. I'll be patient. And this is wajib. This is wajib because this is what Allah wants from us. This is what the ayat are telling us in this chapter. Sabr. 3rd is rida. Pleasure. So more than that, you're actually pleased. How do you reach this level? Right? The ulama say rida, it means either way it's all the same to you. If you test it with the calamity or not, you're still pleased with Allah. You're always pleased. If it happened, it didn't happen, it's all the same to you. It doesn't mean your heart is dead. It means for you, everything you know is from Allah. So I'm okay with it. Allah tested me, I'm pleased. Allah didn't test me with this, I'm still pleased with Allah. Because if you're not pleased, what is it? What will happen? You end up with sukht. And you won't be happy with Allah. And we know, raditu billahi rabban. You're pleased with Allah as your Lord. It's important. You have to have pleasure with Allah. And this is something that's higher. Some ulama say it's wajib to have rida. But Shaykh Muhammad says al-Qawl Al-Sahih, and Ibn Uthaymeen also argued, others, it's only mustahab. For example, he gave the car. Your car crashed. You like this car, it's brand new. It crashed, sabr. It's gone, right? The car is very totaled. Rida is, you're happy, pleased. Allah decreed with this, either for 2 things. Rafa' darajat, raise your levels, or mukaffarat al-dhunub. It has many wisdoms. So rida is higher level. You're not just patient, holding back yourself back from complaining and from angry. You're actually pleased. So some ulama says, why should you be pleased? But we know it's actually mustahab, it's higher level because not everyone can be pleased. How many of us will be pleased that our brand new car was crashed? Right? Our iman has to be high to be that level. It's okay, whatever. Many of us were not there. We might say, subhanAllah. Brother, you don't know how much I have to pay for this, and the things let me bring to you. So rida is higher. Then the last one, shukr, we have gratitude. And why? Because the person is the highest level of shukr, because he knows this is the test, because Allah loves him. Allah's raising him. It's better for him. He's going to get more in the akhirah. Allahu Akbar. This is the best of the ways. And shukr is something which you do with your actions, and something which you can do with your tongue, and it's the highest level. كَإِنَّهُ كَانَ عَبْدًا شُكُورًا. Nuh was عَبْدًا شُكُورًا. لَا أَكُونَ عَبْدًا شُكُورًا. Rasul says, should not be a grateful servant. So shukr is the highest, because you know these tests are easier than the one in the akhirah. So Allah tests me now, it's going to come later. Allah would rather have me tested now in the dunya than the akhirah, as the hadith will come next. And it's better for you. This is shukr, it's the highest level. Because most people can't see it. Most people say, I don't know why I'm being tested. Allah, He tests us for wisdoms and for reason. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows best. And it's so important. As a Muslim, we have to have a higher level. We have to aspire to be like this. Hadith, whatever grief or sorrow that afflicts a believer, or anything, whatever it be, except that He's made an expiation for him, even of the pricking of a thorn. So that's what, this is something that Hadith to prove this. إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ قَوْمٌ يبتلاهم. Allah loves the people He tests them. So if you know that, you'll be grateful. Allah's testing me. And who are the best? Who are the people tested most? We're going to get there. They asked the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أَيُّ النَّاسِ أَشَدُّ بَلَاءً. Which people get tested most? ثم فالأمثل. Then the next best. فالأمثل. Then the next best people. So here we see. Next he brings the hadith. Marfu' Ibn Mas'ud said, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "He's not one of us who slaps the cheeks, tears the clothes, and cries the matter, or calls to the call of the days of ignorance." So this is connected to the last one. You can't wail. لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ ضَرَبَ الْخُدُودِ, who slaps his cheeks out of calamity. وَشَقَّ الْجُيُوبِ, rips the pockets and the clothing, because again, out of anger and distress. And وَدَعَى بِدَعْوَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ, and calls the people to da'wah jahiliyyah. So here, all this goes against patience. This is the point. Goes against patience. We also benefit here that da'wah to jahiliyyah is haram in Islam. You cannot call people to the cause of jahiliyyah. All calls of jahiliyyah have been abrogated. تحت قدمي موضوع, Rasulullah said, under my foot, abolished. So da'wah to jahiliyyah is not anything to do with Islam. Allah criticized them, the Quraysh, for having this with them. إِذْ جَعَلَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الْحَمِيَّةَ حَمِيَّةَ جَاهِلِيَّةَ. Allah put in their hearts, those who disbelieved, the hardiness of jahiliyyah. So the ulama said, hardiness of jahiliyyah, the da'wah to jahiliyyah includes all forms. And in that is hizbiyya, partisanship. To have wala and bara dayiq li fikratin mukhalafa. Or wala and bara dayiq to anything. Having this restricted, allegiance, disallegiance. Ibn Qayyim mentioned a great benefit. He said, da'wah to jahiliyyah, what it is the dua or the call to the qaba'il, to tribalism, to asabiyya, to bigotry, to calling people, for example, said to all types of madahib specifically, or ta'ifa, sects, or groups, or mashayikh even, وَتَفَضَّلْ بَعْضُهُمْ بَعْض, saying this one is better than this one. He said all of these things. And then having then, وَيُوَالِي عَلَيْهِ وَيُعَادِي. He makes wala and bara in relation to these things. This is what da'wah jahiliyyah includes everything. Islam came to give us tawheed and Islam. We don't need to have those calls. Because what happens when the da'wah jahiliyyah comes? It divides the people. When Allah tells us, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا, we're supposed to be unified. So very important we stay away from such calls. Da'wah jahiliyyah has nothing to do with Islam. We have to warn one another of it. Whether there be calls towards nationalities, or ethnicities, or groups, or sects, or anything like this. Islam, we're supposed to unify together ala Kitab wa Sunnah. It's very important. For the fahm sahih, so important, we have to be aware of it. So all these things that Rasulullah is warning against, it goes against sabr ala aqdarillah. When calamity happens to you, is it allowed to cry? Yes, you can cry. But what you're not allowed to do is hit yourself and rip the clothes and say, I'm going to be destroyed. So crying is okay. Feeling sad is okay. Rasulullah, when his son Ibrahim died, what did he say? تدمع العين, the eyes, they shed tears. ويحزن القلب, and the heart feels type of sadness. ولا نقول إلا ما يرضى الرب. ما يرضى الرب. We don't say anything except that which Allah is pleased with. He cried. It's okay to cry one time and to be sad. We're not saying you can't be sad, you can't cry, but you can't go to this level. Because where's habis an-nafs from there? Where's the sabr from there? You're ripping your clothes, you're going wild because of something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed it. So this hadith is connected to the other two. And to increase us now, the Shaykh brings the authentic hadith. Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu ta'ala reports, if Allah wants good for a servant, He hastens His punishment for him in the world. But if He wants evil for His servant, He holds back for him. He holds back for his sins and recompenses him for it on the day of resurrection. It's a very important hadith. إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِعَبْدِهِ خَيْرًا, if Allah wants good for His servant, عَجَّلَ لَهُ الْعُقُوبَةَ فِي الدُّنْيَا, He makes quick His punishment, or hasten the punishment in the dunya. Means you do something, you see the results in the dunya immediately. Punishment comes, something happens to you. إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ, if Allah wants good for the servant, this is what happens. You see today how we think, that when we say good life, nothing happens to us bad. What is that from the way of the Sahaba and Salaf? And where is that from Islam? Your life is, nothing happens, no calamity, no sickness, no problems. That's a sign, that's actually a bad sign. It means you're in trouble. And we said last week, the hadith, Sahih Muslim Ahmed, everything you're getting, you're upon disobedience. فَإِنَّمَا هُوَ istidraj. Allah is bringing you closer to punishment. In the life today, we say, this is the perfect life. I get no problems, health issues, I have all the time money, I have no problems in life anywhere. Say, na'udhu billah. It's a big trouble. That person is a big problem. Even the Sahaba and Salaf to the extent that someone who didn't get headaches, One man at the time told Rasul told him, do you know what a headache is? I don't know. He said, what a headache is. He said, if you want to see a person in hellfire, here's one, he said. Who doesn't get a headache? What do you mean? This is important. Headaches are from the test of Allah, small one. This is important. Today we complain about everything. Because we change our idea what a good life is. If Allah wants good for someone, He tests them. Today we want a life no test. Where do we get this from? The society we're living today telling us. Because for them, we know this is their akhirah. This is their jannah for them. Al-dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir. For them, this is their jannah. Binisbat al-akhirah, when the punishment coming is way worse than what they have here. But for us, this is already know. This is dunya. Dawri ibtila. We're expecting it. We're awaiting it. Not like today we were complaining all the time. I have this issue, that issue. Good for you. Akhirah, inshallah, I'll give you more. إذا أراد الله بعبده خيرا عجل له العقوبة في الدنيا. وإذا أراد, if Allah wants, then shar. He wants evil for abdihi, for his servant. What does he do? He أمسك بذنبه. أمسك عنه بذنبه. He holds back these punishments for him due to his sins he commits. Then يوم القيامة يوافي به. يوم القيامة. He pours all of it off on يوم القيامة. So this hadith is authentic, and this hadith is very important. So the benefits we take obviously is that we should need to change the way we approach calamities. We should not be people who are running from it, but rather we understand it, we accept them. And the Shaykh says here, a nice benefit, that however there's another benefit better than that, and that is holding back from wrongdoings. Before that he says here, hastens the punishment. Punishments are of different forms. Some are connected to the religion, and they are the worst forms, because physical punishments may be realized by an individual. But in this case, it will not be noted except by the one who Allah grants a success. So the punishment Allah He can give you, it can be in your bodily life, like your body, your wealth, your family. And we know another hadith says if somebody's trial will continue to be trialed, the believer, in his wealth, in his self, in his family, حتى يمشي في الأرض وليس عليه خطية. So he walks on the earth, he has no sins upon him. Everything's been expiated, all these challenges and difficulties he has. But what's worse, Allah makes a musibah in your deen, and this is dangerous. Because if you have no knowledge, Allah tests you in religion, deviates you, or brings you some people who will misguide you, and you don't know any better. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ مُصِيبَتَنَا فِي دِينِنَا. It's the hadith of Rasulullah. Don't make the musibah in our religion. And another hadith, authentic Rasulullah said, Allah, if you're going to punish me, or going to test the people, take my life غير مفتوني. Take my life in this trial or before it, without being afflicted at all by it. Because if your religion is tested, then you lost the greatest capital. It means like if somebody's religion becomes corrupt, what's left? Whereas the other one, we can handle that, we can deal with that. Be patient upon it. So here we benefit that it could be different types of punishment. So for us, it could be in school, it could be in your wealth, it could be your family, it could be whatever, it could be any of this. But when Allah holds back from someone, wants evil for him, Shaykh mentions, what does it mean to be evil? Want evil for him? In relation to us, what we consider evil. For Allah, everything He does is for wisdom. So what we see Allah decreed of evil, hikmah. And we know some people, they don't understand that. Why Allah decreed these things for hikmah. And He mentions examples otherwise, in other places as well, from His fatwa. Like for example, ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. Corruptions happen in the sea and land. These are what people have earned. So corruption is something evil. It happened because some people are doing sins. Why? يُذِيقُهُمْ. Allah wants you to taste some of the punishment in dunya. وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. Then you go back to Allah, make tawbah. So hikmah there. So someone should not say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is decreeing evil. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who decreed it, but when we talk to Allah, we don't ascribe to Him like this. We know, shar laysa ilayk. This is what Shaykh mentioned, the evil, we don't ascribe directly to Allah. Allah, in relation to us, we may consider evil, but Allah, everything is khair. Because He always decreed with knowledge and wisdom. So this hadith is important because it also shows us to change our way from being just patient towards to getting rida and shukr. If you know this hadith, you want to aspire not to be more pleased with Allah's decree. And hopefully we even reach the level where you become grateful. And this is important because like I said before, the Rasul one day was asked, who are the people most tested? And he said, Anbiya. في الرواية, Anbiya ثم العلماء ثم صالحون. So some people, they may have false understanding, ulama are not tested. What do you know? What do we know? Hadith of Sallallahu saying that ulama tested. And salihun. Another hadith says that the best example followed by the next best. So what they're tested by, how does it work? This is important. Your religion becomes stronger, you'll be tested more severe. He said that إِذَا أَحَبَّ اللَّهُ قَوْمٍ, if Allah loves someone, إِبْتَلَاهُمْ, He tests them. And He tests somebody, He says, إِذَا كَانَ فِي دِينِهِ سُلْبًا, his religion has some strength in it, firmness in it, أُبْتَلِيَ اشْتَدَّ بَلَاءُهُ, his bala becomes more severe. And if he has, and إذا كان في دينه رقة, he has some weakness in his faith, وبتلي على ما حسب دينه. He gets tested based on how his religion is. So we know a benefit. The more religious you get, you'll find more tests in different angles. And what is the benefit behind those? The very least, expiation of sin. Ibn Qayyim says expiation of sin. And some scholars said also the hasanat, but he says no, only expiation of sin. But if these trials, tribulations lead to good things like patience and shukr, hasanat. So then you get double, you get more expiation and it's good deeds. So we see now, if Allah testing us, it's actually something good for us. It's something good for us. Allah, He loves someone, He tests them. That should change our mind altogether. And what we're learning here in our society subconsciously, you want a good life, you have no tests. That's for the Sahaba, that was a warning sign. That something's wrong. If you have everything you want, there's something wrong. There's no malaka fil akhir bin nasib. You have nothing in akhir. That was for them very scary. So we need to really calculate and shift our mind ala fahm sahih. And to also support this hadith, he brings another hadith, Shaykh Islam, the greatest reward is connected to the severity of the trial. Inna idam al-jazai ma idam al-bala'i. The greatest reward in relation to the greatest of calamity. And when Allah loves the people, He tries them. So whoever accepts it gets pleasure, and whoever shows displeasure, gets angry. Gets the anger of Allah. فَمَنْ رَضِيَ فَلَهُ رِضَى وَمَنْ سَخِطَ فَلَهُ السُّخْطُ. So what do we benefit from this? When calamity comes, we should be at the highest level. فَمَنْ رَضِيَ. There is the proof for رِضَى. فَمَنْ رَضِيَ. If you're pleased, page 130, if you're pleased, when Allah tests you, فَلَهُ رِضَى. Allah is pleased with you. فَمَنْ سَخِطَ. That's the lowest category. فَلَهُ السُّخْطُ. If you get the lowest category, no sabr. So therefore the ulama said the highest level, number one, is shukr. Then followed by that is rida, pleasure. And then bare minimum, which is wajib, sabr. And the last, which you're not allowed to be, is sukht. Because if you get displeased by Allah's tests and decrees, could be anything, فَلَهُ السُّخْطُ. Another hadith, مَنْ جَزَعَ فَلَهُ جَزَعَ. Whoever is impatient will be dealt with this and get the wrath of Allah. So we have to also be careful in terms of how we deal with all calamities. Whatever it may be, small ones, big ones. So Shaykh explains this and he says that here, the greatest reward is in relation to the trial. So as this trial is severe and the individual endures it, so the reward becomes greater. Allah is just. He will not recompense the good doer with anything less than good. So the reward of the thorn that pricks him is not that of a bruise he suffers. This is the evidence from Allah's Prophet, Allah's perfect justice, and that He will never be unjust to anyone. He also seeks to relieve the afflicted. So this is encouraging us. The more trial we get, the more reward we get, so we cannot take it with gratitude. And the best example is Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whenever he used to get sick, he was as sick as if he got the sickness as if he had the sickness of two men. Aisha said, Ya Rasulullah, as if you get sick to the level as if two people are getting sick. I mean, there's the severity of your fever. And he mentioned this is how he's tested. It means he's going to get more reward. It's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another example will be what happens in his life. Things that happen. So we're trying to kill him. People are trying to defame him. People are trying to harm him. More reward. And then we see the people who are tested more, they're getting more reward. Once Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was spoken to by one of the companions in a way which was not befitting, and he became upset. And then he remembered Musa. He said that Musa alayhi salam قد أوذي Musa. Musa was harmed بأكثر من ذلك, with more than this, فصبر. But he was patient. One day a man came to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Arabi, a Bedouin, and he pulled the collar of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam severely. جذبة شديدة. So he left some marking on his neck. So many of us, if we don't have sabr, what are you going to do? Someone treat you like that, you have to fight, you do something. And he told him, Ya Rasulullah, give me the wealth from the wealth Allah has given you. So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no one does that. Sahaba didn't permit either. Anyone to touch Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam like this or to harm him. And we know also physically how strong Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. And I said, how many men? 30 men? The strength of 30 men. So it's not like he was not able to deal with somebody or to show his strength. He turned towards him and laughed and said, give him that which he asks. The Hajj says this is proof for the af and the sabr and the other Rasulullah used to face. And imagine, he treated him like this, Rasulullah, he was patient. And for us, we lost our patience in the first something. Someone says one word, everything was lost. Right? We lose all our akhlaq in that one thing he said. That's not important. That's not the believer how it should be. We have to have more sabr than that. So we benefit from this chapter as well, that if you find tests in your life at different doors, it's a good sign. Sahaba and Salaf, read the seer, read the tariq, what do you see? Lots of calamities. Full of calamities, different ways. Some of them severe, some of them minor, some of them bigger than others. All of this is for encouragement for us. Shaykh also mentioned in benefit of al-Uthaymeen that Yawm al-Qiyamah is called Day of Resurrection, or the last day, or the Day of Resurrection. It's the day of standing, or Day of Resurrection, for three reasons. Number one, he says because the people will physically be standing. يَوْمَ يَقُومُ النَّاسُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. So Qiyamah, why is it called Qiyam? Because we're going to be Qiyam, Yawm al-Qiyamah. We're standing in front of Allah to be held accountable. Secondly, the standing of the witnesses. The witnesses will be brought forth. Allah says, وَيَوْمَ يَقُومُ الْأَشْهَادِ. The day the witnesses will be brought forth and they will testify and they will stand forth. And lastly, the establishment of justice. Another الموازين القسط يوم القيامة. يوم القيامة, the establishment of justice will be there. So these three reasons together, this is why it's called Qiyamah. One of the names, right? Yawm al-Akhir, we know other names. So it's a nice benefit when you hear the word Qiyamah. Now we know a little bit more why it's called the Qiyamah. Then the Shaykh, he talks about here, this benefit we mentioned Aisha, right? Time of the death of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the severity of his sickness, right, he was in, before he passed away, with a statement with the highest companions, to look at the level of steadfastness and certainty of faith and great patience in the face of severe calamity, all in order for the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to obtain the highest level of the patient ones. So here we take his benefit. He said that a person in affliction with trials is considered expiation for his wrongdoings, and hasten to get punished in the world, thus it is better than being delayed in the Akhirah. So if to get punishment in dunya is better than the Akhirah, because we know the adab of Allah in the Akhirah is more severe. أَشَدُّ وَأَبْقَى. Another benefit we also take, he says that the affliction will be greater than wrongdoings. So if someone were to ask which one is better, to be afflicted with calamities or to have ma'aib, like different wrongdoings and sins, it's better to have afflictions, he says, because the individual attains the loftiest ranks due to his patience when he gets afflicted. Whereas if he does sins, he may not return, he repents. And patience of faith is like the head to the body. This is a nice statement. This is actually a narration of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Authentic. Shaykh Hizam says authentic Kitab Ibn Abdul's Kitab Sabr is Ali authentically, or narrations Hassan, that Ali said that the example of sabr, patience, and iman is like that of the head to the body. So it's the head of it, it's the leader. إن الصبر من الإيمان بمنزلة الرأس من الجسد. And the Shaykh ends the chapter really with Shaykh Islam. I mentioned some of the fawaid we take from this. Also that we also side benefit that we learn that love is one of the attributes of Allah and perfection. And it's from the sifat fi'liyah, the actions of, the attributes of action. So this chapter is very important, right? So sabr ala aqdarillah, and it's something we should remind ourselves of, and to also work hard to improve ourselves in it. If anyone has any questions or something you want to add, inshallah, they can ask. Any questions, any points? طيب إن شاء الله. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.